Hey everyone, down in Charleston, talking about taking down the Confederate flag, eh? I haven't been yet to been asked, but I'd like to give the Canadian perspective. I'm a Canadian immigrant. I've moved to the States, and the first thing I noticed here is how consumed they are with race. Where I'm from in Montreal, it's all about language, but here it's race, racity, race, race, race. This country was built on slavery. It's still racist. Obama was just on Mark Maron's podcast the other day saying slavery and racism is in our DNA, and oy, 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 hey, what horrible. Ugh. Here's 5 reasons why you should not take down that flag, and it's from someone who can look at this in a totally unbiased, clinical way. Reason number 1, the numbers. The Civil War has to stay in our mind. All the flags involved, all the Yankee flags, everything needs to be commemorated because we should never forget the stunning numbers of horrific deaths in this war. 620,000 people died. 500,000 of those were Confederates. And they were dying of disease. They were dying in captivity. Up by my place upstate, there was a train that crashed carrying about 800 POWs. Massive crash. 60 people died. These people were dying from shrapnel in their knee. They were dying of exhaustion, of starvation. It is something we have to never forget. It was essentially an American Holocaust, because the population of America was about 35 million, the same as the population of Canada. So when you look at proportional to the entire population, it would be like 6 million dying today. 6 million. Ring any bells? Vietnam was 60,000. 620,000 is about what all Americans have died in all wars. So, devoid of context, devoid of how it makes people feel, we need to remember these poor bastards who died on both sides. And that brings me to number 2. I'm sorry, I'm not buying that this Civil War was about slavery. You talk to these soldiers, okay, let's get in a time machine and talk to these soldiers, and they'll talk like all other soldiers. And you know what soldiers talk about? Their brothers. That guy right there. That's who they're fighting for. They're fighting to protect their brothers. They weren't out there in the battlefield going, I'm going to keep my slaves. You're not taking my slaves. They're making me rich. I'm a racist. I love slavery. Oh, you got me. Oh, well, I died fighting to keep these goddamn slaves. The Civil War was just as much about the North pushing the South around. It was about the South not wanting to be told what to do. It was about the South wanting to secede from the North, and maybe they should have. Was it worth 620,000 people dying? And that brings me to point number 3. What is this idea of Lincoln being a non-racist? He was the great white hope who saved America from its racist self. I'm not buying that America's racist. I don't see it. I think it's a lie. I think there's a lot more kowtowing to minorities than there is crapping on them. Yes, they're in jail, but they're in jail because they've been enabled with welfare and single motherhood to give their children idle hands, and then they got caught up in this stupid drug war. It's not about racism, it's about poorism. And Lincoln was a total racist. He thought blacks were inferior. He thought they should have the same laws as everyone else, but he thought good luck to them ever reaching any kind of success. They're too stupid. He didn't even like interracial marriage. So 2 and 3 are pretty similar, but I like the number 5. But this idea that it was about slavery and Lincoln was this anti-racist that saved us all is complete hogwash. And that brings me to number 4. Why are we listening to this lunatic? He's insane. Look at his hair. You know, in 1927, there was a horrible occurrence, a disaster called the Bath School disaster. And this guy killed 27 children, blowing up a school. He did a bunch of terrorist attacks, and his beef was tax. Now, do we really think that we should have investigated taxes after that? Should the IRS have closed their offices and we all stroke our beards and read his manifesto about tax on behalf of the 27 children that were killed? No, we do the opposite of that. We don't listen to nuts. This isn't an example of racism. This is an example of crazyism. Yes, his manifesto was steeped in racist ideology. Who cares? He's nuts. We don't start kowtowing to him and go, oh, okay, so let's take the flag down. Should we do that? Is that what your manifesto wanted us to do? Is that how we listen to you? Sorry if I bumped the mic there. Here's the number 5 reason, and this is something that no Americans seem to understand. America was not built on slavery. You did not have 400 years of free labor. After the Civil War, the balance sheet was zero. Anything that was built up from slavery was gone. We all started on a blank slate after the Civil War, after those 620,000 men died to keep America unified. They didn't build this road. They didn't build this building. That's all post-Civil War. After the Civil War, this place looked like Haiti post-earthquake. You know, that train crash I mentioned earlier, they just built a mass grave on the site for most of those POWs, but there was 2 who lived for 48 hours. And the Yankees gave these guys a proper burial in a town called Berryville, New York. So there's a church up there, and in the backyard there's a graveyard. And there's Yankee soldiers, there's soldiers who fought Indians, and there's these 2 Confederate POWs. They were our enemies during that war, okay? They were essentially the Nazis in World War II. We gave them a proper burial, and every year on Memorial Day, Americans come by and they do a talk about all the soldiers who died in all the wars, and those Confederate flags are on top of those graves. That is America. Whoa, I almost cried. I teared up there. The America you hear about on the media is from the media class. They're the top 5%. They don't go out. They don't go to upstate New York. They don't go to commemorate Confederates on Memorial Day. They go to luncheons in the Hamptons. They don't know what America is. And America is not a racist country. It's not a country that was built on slavery. It's a country that was built on liberty and freedom. So coming from a Canadian, Americans, I'd like you to get over it. All right? You didn't start slavery. You ended it.